Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this conference on empowerment and partnership and student engagement. Like everyone else, I would much have preferred to be in Dublin, even in November. But I'm thankful that technology makes it possible to meet online. I am honored to be speaking immediately after my friend Gohar Hovhannisyan, the current president of the European Students' Union, and 1 week after the International Students' Day. November 17 commemorates occasions on which students and the student movement have reminded broader society of the importance of democracy and citizen engagement. That takes me to my first point. Is there a difference between student representation and student engagement? In Europe, we're doing fairly well on student representation. Even if Gohar and other student leaders would rightly argue we could do better. And even if what is true for Europe in general is not true for every European country. Belarus is an obvious example. Student representation, then, is about ensuring the student voice is heard when decisions are made. The 2018 Bologna Implementation Report states simply that almost all higher education systems require student and staff representation. When we surveyed the situation quite some years ago, students generally had 15 to 25% of representatives in university governing bodies in Europe, and I do not think the situation has changed radically. The institution and faculty levels seem to be where student representation is most solidly anchored. It seems somewhat less solid in departments and also at the level of higher education systems. At European level, students are well represented by ESU in the Bologna follow-up group and in several working groups. ESU co-chaired the group that developed principles and guidelines for the social dimension of higher education adopted by Bologna ministers just a few days ago. Student representation builds on student elections, and that is perhaps our entry into student engagement. Elections require that students engage at least enough to cast a vote. Turnout in election varies between countries, but it also varies between sectors, and turnout in student election is too often too low. So the first challenge in student engagement is getting out the vote. To do so, students must feel that who represents them in university governance matters because the decisions they make matter. Student organizations have work to do, but so do policymakers. Student engagement goes well beyond governance, as democracy goes beyond elections to include deliberation and participation. Engagement is about developing commitment to public space, whether that space is on campus or in society at large. It is about recognizing that studies are about more than ECTS credits and exams to pass. It is about making education more than just training. 2 years ago, the Council of Europe organized a conference on the local mission of higher education with Dublin City University. In 2014, we organized with other partners from both Europe and the US a conference on the democratic mission of higher education at Queen's University Belfast. Neither mission can be fulfilled without student engagement. The partnership with the US is important because while US universities are not very strong on student representation, student engagement is real and to some extent institutionalized. From our partners in Dublin as well as in Belfast, we have seen good examples of student engagement with broader society, from science shop to community centers, motivating school students to aim for higher education, even if they come from an area of town where they walk past campus every day but never dream of stepping onto it. To young people exploring their options, students are better role models than professors. The student engagement we saw in Dublin and Belfast is a commitment to helping make our societies better. It can take many forms. Teaching slightly younger students and being role models to them is one. Offering practical help is another. Law students at my alma mater, the University of Oslo, have for decades been offering free legal advice to people who can ill afford to pay for it and may not even think of this as student engagement. Working on campus to help integrate new students or students who arrive from abroad is the third. These are students who may not easily find their footing in a new environment and for whom contacts with other students who already know their way around the university can make the difference between success and failure. Student engagement can be helping underrepresented groups organize, but not doing it for them. Or it cannot be teaching language to refugees and migrants. It can be revealing the delights of museums to people who would otherwise do as people from one of its neighborhoods did with Queens, walk past, but not in. As we see, there are many examples of good practice and probably even more possibilities. But how do we, as policymakers, help turn possibilities into realities? On a very immediate level, we can encourage the use of the instruments we already have. In the European higher education area, structural reforms are among the more important achievements, structures that are to be used. The credit system and national qualifications frameworks, for which Ireland has been a pioneer, allow for greater flexibility, devising study programs and individual learning paths. Nothing should prevent any institution from granting a reasonable number of ECTS credits for student engagement that fits into a learning path. And this does not apply only to students of social sciences. It applies equally well to students of astrophysics who motivate young people at the community center to reach for the stars. In assessing quality, we could look at the way institutions encourage student engagement as one of the elements. For the possibilities to be used, higher education leaders and public authorities, as well as such institutions, must demonstrate that student engagement matters. There must be rewards so that students who engage and institutions that encourage them to do so make it clear that this is a part of what higher education is about, not just an optional extra. Policy, practice, and rhetoric need to evolve. Policymakers must make it possible for higher education to fulfill its four major purposes in equal measure. These are preparation for the labor market, preparation for active citizenship and democratic societies, personal development, and the development of a broad, advanced knowledge base. As an organization for democracy and human rights, the Council of Europe is of course particularly concerned with the role of education in developing democratic engagement. We have developed a reference framework for competences for democratic culture, with 20 competences organized around 4 clusters: values, attitudes, skills, and knowledge and critical understanding. They apply to all levels of education, including higher education. They can be developed in schools and on campus, but also in student engagement off campus. But they cannot be developed without engagement, without commitment, as something you learn about in theory for 2 hours a week and forget about the rest of the time. Engagement and democratic competences are like languages. You cannot learn them from books alone. And if you do not use them, you lose them. Student engagement is part of what higher education should aim for and what universities should educate for. Countries like Ireland provide good examples. We need to create opportunities for student engagement through policy, demonstrate its importance through action, and encourage it through the way we refer to students. Students are members of the academic community. They are not clients or customers. Clients shop around. If they do not find what they want, they move on. Members of a community try to improve that community and emigrate only if all else fails. The difference between students and as clients and students as students, between passive students and engaged students, is crucial not only to the future of higher education, it is crucial to Europe. Thank you very much.